Hello everyone, this is Tactical Lich here, and today we are at a how to multiplayer video talking about how to counteract mobility spam, specifically on the map Silver Spire on Domination mode. Ever since Game 3 got released, I've been playing around with my doggo spam army, getting some pretty decent results with these guys, able to counteract almost every single faction other than the older kingdoms, winning even against Slaanesh with mobility. However, in this battle here against my opponent, Strat Games and experienced Total Warhammer player as well, I literally have no chance in winning and got wrecked both in the choice of army selection as well as the tactics employed. Now, for the army builds of my opponent, we have Penta Khorne Halberds. These Khorne Halberds are actually really good at countering everything on the Khorne roster. We have the monsters, the cavalry, and the chariots being dragged down by all their anti-large armor-piercing damage. And for the infantry department, Khorne Halberds, despite being an anti-large infantry, can actually trade well against other Khorne infantry, including the regular Chaos Warriors, the dual axis variant, and of course, other Khorne Halberds. And that is because they have a lot of armor-piercing damage, able to ignore that armor on all those Chaos Warriors, doing some cost-efficient damage. And unlike other halberds, they actually have good offensive stats because of the ability Frenzy, buffing up their melee attack, allowing them to overpower other units' melee defense. So even Bloodletters, who have rather low melee defense stats, will get hit consistently and not exactly getting the best trade in the world. And these offensive halberds are truly the powerhouse in this matchup, especially when supported by the most powerful melee combatant of the entire Game 3, Skybrand the Exiled. Well, you can say that my hero squads are pretty damn doomed, especially when my opponent pouring in more of their hero summon reinforcements. And now let's talk about the tactics side. Silver Spire is a really tight map, having a lot of choke points. You can really easily seal up all these passages with a small number of infantry, and this is exactly what my opponent is doing, sealing off these backdoors with their infantry. My mobility right now is unable to backdoor my opponent's forces, unable to sneak through these gaps. Even if I can get my Fleshhounds of Khorne behind enemy lines, we will be intercepted by all these Chaos Warriors with halberds and possibly any mobility reinforcement. And my opponent here is slowly inching forward these Chaos Warriors with halberds, and knowing that my roster have nothing to counteract them, I cannot really engage them in melee combat. Especially with the Chaos Furies not doing armor-piercing damage, the Fleshhounds of Khorne being large models will get dragged down, and if they try to sneak around into the enemy backlines, my opponent can easily summon in some Khorne Dogs or their own Fleshhounds to pin them down in combat and allow the Chaos Warriors with halberds to come back in and perform a rear charge, destroying, isolating my units. And now, in the front line, my opponent is also slowly inching forward the infantry, trying to seal off all flanks, preventing myself from performing any rear charges, spreading out their entire front line, trying to counteract my forces and cover the entire length of their whole choke point. At the same time, more reinforcements like the Bloodletters are being summoned and pouring into the front line. And my Khorne Dogs only having a desperate attempt trying to go through this little gap here to perform rear charges, but even if I get those rear charges off, they will have a horrible time fighting against these anti-large halberds. My only saving grace is these Bloodletters, buffed up by the Locust of Wrath. They can actually kill off these Chaos Warriors pretty effectively. But with the warriors being pulled back and with more warriors flooding in from the flanks, as these second units of Bloodletters got wrecked by a summon of Bloodletters, and also we have the Skybrand in combat as well, getting already 20 kills. My whole strategy of flanking, rear charging, and isolating my opponent's units got heavily countered. I can't really charge these halberds here because they're great at taking down my Furies and Khorne Dogs. I can't really flank around effectively, as over here we have some Fleshhounds attempting to flank, but exactly what my opponent did is to just pour in more of their own dogs, bog them down, and now the halberds are pouring in to shut them down. And in the melee grind in the middle, things are going poorly in my direction as well. We have the Bloodletters of Khorne, the summons one, being dragged down by both my opponent's summons and the halberd, and my characters are being focused down by my opponent's own characters, especially with the Horn of Khorne buff improving their attack stats. My herald just get destroyed by Spire the Exiled, and at this point my defeat is basically sealed. I'll just fast forward here, as my mobility forces were not able to pull off any meaningful rear charges. My opponent just keep flooding in more and more cost-effective infantry, even some spawn of chaos. The Khorne spawns are coming in, wrecking my lightly armored Khorne Dogs and Bloodletters, and the reserve halberds are also pushing in. Even some of the units are making around the flanks, flooding my backline, recharging me, giving me a taste of my own medicine. And with all my forces being isolated, finished off, and my hero squads being destroyed by Spire and Spire surviving with a sliver of HP, I just lost this battle. My opponent successfully dominated the battlefield with a slow, cautious push with a core of powerful melee infantry. Honestly, Silver Spire is such a terrible map for mobility. The whole map is so tightly packed with impassable terrains with choke points. There is basically no way for your mobility to maneuver. Between your own deployment zone and your opponent's deployment zone, there are only 3 routes available. You either go through the objective on your opponent's end, or you have to go through the middle objective, and last but not least, going through the objective on your side. 3 routes only, and all of them are packed with choke points here, choke points here, choke points here. And as choke points, they are all easily defensible, as you can clog up all those narrow passages with all kinds of chaff or defensive infantry, thus limiting the movement of any mobility, as they cannot get past easily and will be bogged down in melee combat. Just like here, I was just maneuvering with my mobility, the Khorne Dogs here, going through the passage on my objectives and sealing the passage with my Khorne Dogs. That means that they cannot charge in with their mobility, their Hell's Riders and Slaanesh cavalry. Otherwise, I would just drop in with some Furies and the Bloodthirster and destroy their pack, while I am just slowly but steadily pushing up some of my Khorne halberds to the middle objective and challenge them in hand-to-hand combat. Also summoning in more Chaos Warriors of Khorne, going through this end, trying to seal off the second flank as well. And even if you only have your starting army, you can still easily protect your whole army from any flanking charges, because you only need to seal off this entrance and this entrance of the map, and you basically secured your backlines. If they try to drop in any flying units, they would just get bogged down, surrounded by your reinforcement, especially mobilities like, say, Khorne Dogs, Hounds, and light cavalry. And for the whole time, as your opponent just hesitated in charging in, you can slowly push up troops to capture other objectives, or push up more troops to basically seal off the further choke points, and slowly squeezing the area for maneuver for your opponent. Over here we can see that I'm just pushing in my infantry and now flooding in some of my Khorne Dogs to bog down any attempts to rear charge, just like how Strat Game shut down my Khorne Dog flanking charge. And that's basically it for my opponent's mobility. A lot of them are not able to get into position to provide any more flanking charges. Even if they can, I still have more Khorne Dogs and my Furies in position to rush over and seal off the gap, or just basically intercept their attempt. Even if they manage to sneak through the gaps over here and try to go over to the back lines, I can still intercept with some spare mobility that I can just easily bring out from the reinforcement zone and intercept them. And that's basically it for the whole mobility game from our opponent here. They're unable to flank, unable to perform any rear charges, unable to use that mobility and charge bonus to their advantage of the Slaanesh army. Even after summoning in even more of those Slaanesh cav, I still have the troops to basically fend them off and maybe free up some of my mobility and go and intercept them, and basically using this tight choke point to slowly grind down the squishy Slaanesh army. So in short, Silver Spire is an absolutely horrible map for any kind of mobility. With all those choke points and impassable terrain, there is simply no room for maneuvering and repositioning your mobility, making it really easy to shut down enemy mobility even if you have a slow army like that of Nurgle and also Cathay. Basically, just play the slow and steady game, fill up all the choke points, preventing any ground mobility from getting through your backlines, and you are golden on this map. Even the most powerful mobility, the Slaanesh army, will get strangled by a noose formed by a slow and steady push of enemy infantry. And yeah, that's basically it for today. And if you like the content, remember to hit the like and subscribe to get notified for more Total War Warhammer multiplayer videos. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.